So this is something that we did. We tried a couple of times over a year ago, and I was probably a little overzealous about it in the beginning, and I had, for a long time, prayed that God would put it on your heart to want to do it again.
Mm-hmm.
And so then when you said to me the other day, what was that just yesterday morning or 2 mornings ago?
It was yesterday morning.
You said that you wanted to give this a try again, and I thought that was really interesting. So before we get into what I think that we were going to talk about, I guess, what made you want to do it again? We're going to crack at it.
If I'm being honest, it's not that I want to do it. I just thought it would be something we've been talking about, doing things just to help sort of not humanize you like you're not a human, but just kind of like have the people that do follow you get to know you as a whole person a little bit more, and give you an opportunity to talk about things for the book or just things that might lead to stories in the podcast or things. I just felt like it could be helpful, so I thought we could give it a try.
That's interesting because the book that I'm writing now, which is the sequel to The Way Out of Self-Sabotage into Self-Mastery, I'm writing that because I want people to get to know you more.
Mm-hmm.
Because that book is being written and told, that story is being told through your point of view and perspective. Because there already have been people, and I'm just saying this for them, you already know this, that have come up to me and said, who is Tiffany? I think there was somebody at the book signing who even mentioned that. So it's interesting that we're kind of looking out for perhaps the best interest of the other.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm not sure how that coincides. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, maybe that's what we'll find out. But we were talking last night about what we were going to talk about on here, and Sam, our son, had texted me yesterday morning talking about how well he did at live at bats. Our son Sam is a 20-year-old pitcher at Northwest Florida State, and he told me that he just went back to having fun, like when he was being a kid again. And I said, that's really interesting that you said that, because the motif, I don't know if it's the theme or not, but that I'm writing this second book is trying to get more men back to that state where I know that I'm in that camp where I have a really hard time intentionally carving out time for fun, and anytime that something could be deemed fun or just playful, I pervert it, and I have a proclivity to make it performance based rather than just simply playing and having fun. And I think that robs a lot of what could be really good college and or professional careers of athletes, because they go into it with this performance mindset, and I think that social media only exacerbates that because it's a notice me culture, and if you're not doing something profound or, as I said, performing, well then what are you actually doing? Are you even playing the game at that point? And it's just coming at it so backwards, it's inverted. And what I was sharing with Sam is that, and I used Brett Favre. I used to watch Brett Favre mic'd up clips on YouTube, and he said before a game, it was opening kickoff had just happened, and they were about to break the huddle, and he just looked at his guys and he said, pretend like you're in the background playing, because ultimately that's what got you here. And it's only, I think, that you can only perform when you play, but not the other way around. If you go into it trying to perform, you're not going to play as well as you want to. And I think that's paralleled with being childish and childlike. I think that the childish athlete, the childish man, focuses more on performance, but the childlike athlete, the childlike man, goes into the game wanting to play. The childlike man knows it's okay to have fun. In fact, it's necessary to have fun and things like that.
Yeah, and I can relate that to when Sam was younger, watching them play baseball. There were kids that were trying to make the cool plays, that wanted people to see them make a cool play. So whether it was a routine play or not, they were going to do something to make it look like it was spectacular. And oftentimes then they wouldn't make the play because they were trying to perform. And when Sam would do some really cool things out there, and it was because he was always having fun. Like that was his domain. Like he would be there from the time he woke up to the time he went to bed at night. So he was truly just having fun and playing. So there wasn't this thought process of, oh, I'm going to try and do this. He just went out and played like a kid would play in the backyard.
Deion Sanders always said, look good, play good. And my coach at Grand Valley, Coach Yoches, he flipped it on its head. He always talks about playing good makes you look good.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than the other way around, because I think that too many athletes, especially in games like baseball and football, they're so focused on drip. I mean, really looking the part.
Oh yeah.
Really looking the part, whether it's the eye black or the visors or
the Oakley sunglasses.
The wrist tape, the arm sleeves, the spatted ankles. If you play football, you know what I'm talking about. Because it does. I mean, and Yoch was that way. Yoch didn't. When Yoch played it, a teammate of mine, and we used to watch old Grand Valley cut-ups of in 04 and 05. It might have been 02, 03 actually when Yoch played. But you just saw this big white guy in the defensive line, bare arms, no gloves, no tape, no ankles taped, just the most bland player out there. But that was part and parcel of what he was talking about. He didn't really care how he looked. He was going to play good, and that's what made him look good.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've gotten away from that. I know we've gotten away from that because now you see it even in the little leagues. The kids are just so obsessed with. And I think do you think that's a fine line? So you want to have the kids, you don't want to take that away from them, but at the same time, you don't want that to become sort of their identity.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see that with your? Because we were talking a little bit about this last night, and I want to delve into this. Do you see any of this relating to what you do? She teaches second grade.
Yes, and we talked about this a bit last night. You're right. That my passion for teaching has definitely been renewed, and I love what I do. But there was a period of time when I left the classroom, and I didn't envision myself ever returning. Like I was so burned out. And I mean, there were other things going on that kind of contributed to it, but a lot of it was with the way things are in education now. It was all about hitting test scores and your numbers, and so then any inconvenience that's going to take you away from your performance, that's at one point I think it was worth 40% of your evaluation or something. Then it becomes, you lose that human aspect of it because you're like, okay, you've missed 7 days of school in a row now. And how am I supposed to catch you up so that I can make my growth, so that I can keep my job? You know what I mean? That whole kind of mindset, and that just was exhausting, and it no longer was, that wasn't the motivation for me going into teaching. And so when I left for I didn't even leave for a whole year, but in that time, it just kind of allowed me to take a step back, and when I came back again, it really was with this childlike joy. I had found that passion again from when I was a little girl wanting to be a teacher, playing school with chalkboards in my classroom. And it was just this reminder of what's really important, and the performance, like kids are gonna learn, they're sponges, but get back to relationships and making connections and having fun and building a community versus feeling the pressure of having to perform with expected growth with 30 kids that have so many other things that are beyond your control. It's sort of like you have to just say whatever, and get back to really the reason that for me that I was there, and that was kids and relationships.
So what do you do then when you have somebody who's missed 7 days and you're judging? That's clearly affecting KPIs that you're judged on at the end of the year. What do you do in that situation?
For now, where I'm at now, I just don't care. When they come back, it's about, oh my goodness, I'm so glad you're here. We missed you so much. It's welcoming them back in. It's helping them get readjusted, and whatever they missed, a lot of times we'll cycle through it again, or I'll kind of pull them aside and work one-on-one with them if I think they need extra help. But I just at this point, yes, it can be frustrating, but at the same time, it's like, what are you gonna do? And it's this little peanut, and it's not their fault, and my focus is on the child, not the test score. So I know that in the grand scheme of their life, missing 7 days of school or 30 days of school, although that's not ideal, you know, it's not going to derail their entire life. And let's focus on their emotional state and them feeling confident and wanting to be here, because before they can do learning, they have to feel safe and secure and loved. So
I really would like you to have a conversation with Jordan about that someday, because whenever you hear him talk about the reason why college students, mainly because that's what he worked with, why they needed to write. And he would go 7 whys deep with some people. Why do you need to write? Well, I need the grade. And it's like no. You write because you need to learn how to think, and then if you can think, then you can speak, and if you can speak, then the whole world opens up for you. And so I'm saying that I think your situation is a microcosm of that, in the sense that if you get a kid back after missing so much time and you're just focusing on the grade, you're really not doing your job.
correct.
Right? I mean, yeah, he could just say, if I were teaching at Harvard like he was, yeah, we're gonna write this because you need to get this grade, so it looks good for me, and that's performance and all of these things, and we're moving along, and on the industrial cog the wheel spins, right? So that I would love it if you guys could talk about that someday, because I think that is, I mean, I don't know, I'm not in your world. Do you see teachers falling into that pit of falling on the wrong side of the play versus performance spectrum?
I think inevitably it can happen to anyone. And there's also the reality of the performance for our jobs does matter. So I don't discount people that are looking at it and paying attention to it. I think it ebbs and flows, and I think it's a big reason that a lot of teachers are leaving the field. The ones that are staying, I see a lot of positives, and they're really there because they love kids, and it's not like teachers don't see the brokenness of the school system. We see it, and we're still there because we want to make it better, and they're in there every day trying to make it better on the front lines with the actual students.
So how do you negotiate that reality every day? Because then as you were saying that, I was thinking of, do you remember when you, Sam, and I went to Bears Packers in 2022, and we were waiting for the players to come out of the locker room after the game was done, and then this one mountain of a man came out. It was Mercedes Lewis. Mercedes Lewis is still playing, and he just finished, I think, his 18th season as a tight end for the Bears, but he was with the Packers at the time. Mercedes is never and has never showed up on the stat sheet, performance-wise. Never. He was never a big playmaker, never going to go to a Pro Bowl, never first team All-Pro, or anything like that. But that was one person that Aaron Rodgers always vied for with LaFleur in the front office to bring back year after year after year, because it was those intangible qualities that Mercedes brought to the locker room as a leader. Do you see any of that in what you do, as far as, I guess the performance is important, but Mercedes was never going to show up in the stat sheet. He was there he was a locker room leader.
Yeah, yes, and so I mean, I think that's part of the reason that our school system needs to be addressed, because one, there are those kids that are not going to perform on tests or what we give them in the classroom, but they have so many gifts. That they have so many I mean, just with some of the minds of these kids and their just huge hearts, like there's nothing they can't do, but their path might never be to be the highest reader, or they might never be a fast reader. They may struggle to be a slow reader all their life, and school makes them feel like they're stupid, and they're not. And it's just there's so many things that contribute to student success. But the biggest thing for me as a teacher, and most of the teachers that I've worked with, is that as long as they leave my classroom feeling more confident, feeling that they are loved, that they have a place that they can go where they can be nurtured, where they were seen, that someone took the time and saw their unique qualities. Whereas with a lot of these kids, especially little boys, they have a hard time sitting still, and they're impulsive and they're loud, and by the time they get through school, they feel like they're not good kids. So those kids, you look in the back and they're upside down in their chair during your lesson. They're not performing really well on their standardized tests, but they are so brilliant and so incredible, and their talents are elsewhere. And so I want to nurture my kids so that they believe in themselves and see how amazing they are, regardless of that stuff. Now, some kids have a talent for academics, and that's they love to learn and they love to read, and then you want to nurture that as well. But the bigger thing, way before performance, is or even academic growth, is to nurture each child as an individual and those intangibles, and to get to know them so you know what their gifts are. And you can celebrate those, you can steer them in kind of in that direction, and you can celebrate with their parents, because oftentimes, parents don't hear, if your child's not doing great academically, you feel like you're failing as a parent, you hear negative. So even in terms of being supportive of parents, like having someone see their child, like, yeah, they really are struggling with reading, but man, look at what they can draw, or look at how compassionate they are, or whatever their gifts might be. Maybe they're, writing poetry, or they have a beautiful singing voice. I don't know, whatever it is, but that's always more important than performance and academics and any of that for me. And most teachers.
What is play?
Well, play is definitely important for young kids. That's, definitely how they learn. But being able to see students and celebrate them and hopefully allow them to feel seen, that is what's more important to most teachers than them getting a great grade. Like, yes, we want them to academically improve, of course, but I don't know any teacher that I have ever worked with that would say, yeah, I would rather have them reading at grade level by the end of the year, even if they feel miserable about themselves and they've, are suffering from anxiety and are, hate school. I would rather them be a little below grade level, but have confidence because they worked really hard all year and they saw some growth and they felt supported and they realized that they can do school, they can do hard things, and that, although grades can be important for certain things, especially as kids get older, but learning early on that hard work and growth are celebrated and are what are more important.
So I was that way when I was younger. School was really boring for me. There wasn't anything that was really engaging at all. It wasn't fun, and I'm not saying that we needed to just purely chase fun, but learning for the grade was never my thing. It was vapious. Just kind of as soon as I got it, it was okay. It wasn't anything different. If I got an A in 4th grade, it lasted just about as long. The joy that is from that lasted just about as long as any hedonistic pleasure that I took part in when I was in my 20s.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what do we do about that? Because I think that, I mean, we joke about, I won't mention that. I think that how do we get out of a performance mindset? Because you're at where the genesis of it is.
Mm-hmm.
How do we get out of that? Because I think that's robbing a lot of children, especially men, because you said especially boys,
Mm-hmm.
struggle in the classroom. So how do we start shifting them? Is there a shift? How do we shift it more from performance to play, and then that way we can start building men to become more childlike rather than childish, overgrown infants, things like that.
Mm-hmm. So, I'm going to start with the beginning of your question again, because we kind of went on to men, growing infants. Can you start at the very beginning?
It seems like every now and then, like, you just see so many overgrown infants in professional sports, and it doesn't have to be professional sports, but it could be any arena.
Mm-hmm.
But you just see people acting like complete idiots, and
I
think it goes directly back to some of the things that you're experiencing every day, because that's where it starts. And they're on a performance, notice me, Instagram mindset, and they become so childish. And when really we have to just shift. We can just turn it on its head. And there's always this moment, not always, but I think there's more moments than we perhaps notice. Like Sam, he's just like, I just said screw it. I started having fun like I'm a kid again.
Mm-hmm.
And then he balled out. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, for kids in the classroom, I think that starts with relationships. And it's such a cliche thing to say in education on relationships, but it's true. Like, kids need to know that you love them. They need to feel seen. They need to have boundaries. They also need to be held accountable. So I think all of that fits into the structure of a classroom that creates an environment where kids build confidence and they build rigor, but they also build responsibility and discipline, and that allows them to then explore safely within those boundaries. And when someone takes the time to really get to know them, they might realize, we don't study this in 2nd grade, but this kid loves space, loves this. So guide them toward resources, guide them toward things because they love to learn about that. Or maybe you discover that they're really good at something that they never knew they were good at. It's all about getting to know the kids. So you see what those intangible gifts that they have are that you don't see in their CA60 file and on their standardized tests and on their report cards. You need to take the time to get to know them. And even Sam will talk about, he did not engage really in school. It was difficult for him, but he did well. There was a few teachers that took the time, really saw him, built a relationship with him, and he did well in those classes. And so I think that all plays into it. I think, you did really, when you were in 5th grade and you wrote that essay for your teacher, like, you really liked her.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, she would stay after school with me, and there was more than a few times, that was sort of our thing. It wasn't even detention. She just stayed after
Mm-hmm.
to help me out, and that was always the thing, is that I remember we were working on the thing together, and we were looking for another word we're looking for a synonym for improve, for when it comes to shoes over the years? And I said, develop. And she's like, that's a good one. And then we went down to the pop machine. She bought me Dr. Pepper, and then that started becoming the thing. Whenever I would do a good thing, we'd walk down the hall, and Mrs. Schmitz would throw 75 cents in the vending machine, and I get a Dr. Pepper, and then that was our thing. And yeah, now Mrs. Schmitz is in the book for that reason. So,
but she took the time to see you and celebrate your gifts. You had this gift even then with words and language and creativity, and she saw that and she opened that up for you. And that, I think, is the goal. She saw in you more than just your test scores in math and science and social studies, whatever they were, I don't know. But
yeah, and she as you said, she kind of created a little bit of a boundaries, or a little garden paradisa, right, of which I could play safely in. And that's what it was for half an hour, 45 minutes after school, just her and I. And I see that in the people that I work with all the time, every day. My managers, I pour into them. They know that I genuinely care about them. And I think that's part of the reason why whenever things go awry in my district, big problems can be solved very quickly. Because I have a lot of relationship equity with all those women. And they know if Hunter needs something, we're gonna go. Just if Hunter says jump, we'll say how high, boss, right? Because I've put in boundaries for which they can operate and play safely in, and then they perform.
And for kids, sometimes the classroom is the only place they have that.
The classroom is the only place they have that. You said especially boys. I think I know the answer. Why especially boys?
I think it's just the structure of school. I mean, we know that kids learn best through play. There's a new program our district is starting next year where the language arts curriculum piece has a ton of built-in play for the kindergarten grade level, which is huge. I'm excited to see how kids starting from kindergarten learning that way. By the time they get to second grade, what changes we'll see in their reading. But I just lost my train of thought. What were you asking me?
Why boys?
Why boys? So the nature of school. I mean, there's just how we have it set up. Again, there's a focus on test scores. So it's like you're trying to get these kids to learn. It's high pressure. And when you think about little ones and asking them to kind of sit and listen and then perform, that's a lot. I mean, they're little peanuts. So sitting, listening, learning, then performing, those are a lot of steps. And some of them are just developmentally, they're still not quite there yet. And then especially for young boys, when we're asking kids to sit and learn, even if you give brain breaks and you have them on the carpet and then you move them to their seats and you're doing these things and they're getting some movement, it's not the same. And for little boys especially, sitting still, having to be quiet, that's really difficult. And then it's not their fault. I mean, especially when they're 5th grade and under, they're still so little. But then you see them struggling academically because they can't sit still and pay attention, or they have behavioral issues because they're impulsive and they can't sit still and they want, then they start acting out because they need to get their energy out. There's so many different reasons, but little boys especially. Girls, will sit oftentimes quietly in their seats, and it's more common for that. But for those boys, when I taught 4th grade, or even now in 2nd grade, by the time they get there, they have this image of themselves as bad, like naughty kids, because that's the message that they unintentionally they're hearing. You have to do this. You're not doing this. You're not. You know what I mean? And so that's why I think it's especially hard for little boys when they're just acting out in their nature.
Do you think it has anything to do with the umbrellas for boys? Because you see them 7 out of the 17 hours in their day, right? What's
Mhm.
happening the other 17 hours at home?
Well, right. So, I mean, that's what I mean for some of them. The boundaries and the accountability and the discipline, that's where they have that. They don't have that. They don't have structure and and boundaries and expectations. I mean, I'm not saying all students, but you do have students that don't have that in their home life.
When I say umbrellas, so this will be a concept in the next book, but I just didn't want that to go over anybody's heads. So there's two different types of Christian households. There's one that's under Satan's covering, and there's one that's under Jesus' covering. Satan's covering goes, Satan is the head of the house because he has emasculated the man, so the woman is the head of the house, which then undermines the man, and then that allows Satan direct access to the children. When a house is in proper order, Jesus is the lead, which puts the man at the head of the house, and then the woman and son are under his covering because he is following the will of God. Go ahead.
So I mean, I think we've seen that affect all of society. I mean, with the rise of single motherhood and no fathers in homes, that's huge. We feel that.
I was gonna say, because you have a lot of childish men out there right now who are focused on performance, and performance can apply to a vast array.
Mm-hmm.
Performance with women,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then if they're not having to commit long term,
Mm-hmm.
right, and they're able to have several short term sexual partners, well, then society would deem them performing rather well.
Right.
And how childish is that?
Mm-hmm.
And we see, and then it's sort of, it's cyclical. And then you see, as you said, this rise of single motherdom, and then where are the dads? Well, the dads aren't dads at all. They're kids having kids. And
I mean, I think, yeah, I think the performance, but I also think that there has been a strong shift of accountability, and kids aren't held accountable. People aren't held accountable in the same way anymore, and you then see that in very immature adults.
mm-hmm. And it goes back to what we were talking about when you're having me read from Jordan's new book.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So there's a lot of childish men out there who are performing vis-a-vis multiple short-term sexual partners,
Mm-hmm.
and then now we end up with the households that we end up with these days, and then you get their kids.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And whereas if there were less childish performing men and more childlike playful men, then I think that not only would more households be in alignment with God's will, but then, as Jordan so eloquently put it in the book, it's those partnerships, man and woman, that end up being the most playful.
Mm-hmm.
And if mom and dad are playful, well, more is caught than taught. The
Mm-hmm.
kids are going to emulate that.
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely, both of us have said just kind of randomly to each other at different times that we hope that something that Sam brings into his eventual marriage someday is our laughter, like how much we laugh.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's something I hope he has in his marriage.
Yeah, I know that was something that was missing, in from what I saw when I was younger,
Mm-hmm.
and that obviously led down a dark path that I won't get into now by the book. And if you could do it, let's say you had complete control, because I do think that you, whether you like it or not, are sort of the launch point for a lot of these children. You're at that extremely formative
Mhm.
time. So if you had complete control, how would you do it to get away to have the perfect blend of, or should I say, swinging on the pendulum, performance and play,
I think,
as it pertains to the classroom launching out what are soon going to be adults in society?
mhm. I mean, the first thing and foremost would be that every child gets what they need. There are some students who just need extra help, who have different learning disabilities or different struggles, and to we're taught, and it's been taught in the education colleges all over the country for decades now. I again lost my train of thought.
Talking about kids getting what they need.
Yes. But that every kid is different. Teaching differentiation. You've got to meet kids where they are. Some kids need accommodation. Some, whatever it may be. And to have students that need more help than what you can give them or what you're qualified to give them, and be met with a brick wall of being able to get them any further help. So that would be something that if I could change and I had complete control, it would be if we suggested we need to evaluate this student for special education services, like there's something going on, whether there is a learning disability,
Mhm.
we're going to at least figure out something about why this child is struggling to learn in comparison to his peers. So that would be one, because there's so many kids that you want to help, but there's something else going on, and if parents don't agree to evaluation or agree to the services, your hands are tied. You can't do anything. It's sort of I equate it to, less serious because it's someone's life in your hands, but if you were a doctor and you saw a child that was bleeding out and the parents were like, no, we think that the bleeding will stop on its own. We don't want you to touch them. And you're just kind of like, you're stuck watching this kid bleed out, or you're stuck watching this kid just fall farther and farther and farther through the cracks.
But you are watching that. It's just a much slower process.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So I would get rid of that. I
Mhm.
would have more control over that. Introducing more play. I think it's really important to emphasize all different kinds of professions and jobs, different specialties, different trades, because those are so very important and they're really lucrative positions. I don't know why decades ago only it sort of became the standard of, everyone has to go to college and everyone needs to have a college degree in every job. Like it doesn't. There's many other educational routes to take for work. But I would also do more with knowledge-based learning. So many kids come from environments where they're just not exposed to all of the things. You can take two kids, same age, they live in different areas, different circumstances. Child A has two parents that are married, that are both college educated, that have professional jobs, that read to their child every night, that understand, they don't have struggles. And you've got one over here, same age, same grade, and it's a single mom who dropped out of high school, and she has to work 2 minimum wage jobs to try and take care of the kids. You know what I mean? There's just very different life situations. So just making sure that when we see these things, we're able to meet those kids where they are.
But going back to the play piece of it,
Mm-hmm.
not only will they learn themselves how to move through time and space, but also they'll learn how to play and navigate social circumstances with the opposite sex.
Yes.
And so there's sexual implications from play as well.
I would say even more than sexual implications, it's So kids today aren't as socialized as they used to be because they spend so much of their free time on screens.
Mm-hmm.
And because school isn't as play focused, you know, when I was in school, we had lots of free time and playtime, and you had dress up and you interact and you play out scenarios or stories, and none of that really exists anymore. Jeez, I cannot stay on track. So you were saying the play.
Yeah,
So
but the screen time is so much more exponentially high now. I mean, I remember Mr. Wotila was his name. And Al and I and Frank and Josh and Ross, we would sit there, and that was our only screen time in the entire frickin' week at St. John the Baptist in Howard, Wisconsin. Just frickin' sitting there, Mario teaches typing, and we just frickin' hated it. It was 45 minutes of just typing the same damn thing, going through the same damn letters, and we could not wait to get out of that thing.
Mm-hmm.
And now that's all it is.
I mean, there's a lot of on Chromebooks and things like that, but back to your point about socializing and just in terms of male and female interactions, what I really love to see, and I remember this with Sam when he was younger, he had a couple of really good girl friends, and our nephew Trey, same way, he's got a couple of really good girl friends, and what I love about that, and what I love about it when I see it in the classroom from a young age, is it teaches boys and girls both that, you know, teaches boys, hey, girls are people. They get to know them as just a person, as a friend, before they're old enough to see them as anything sexual or being attracted to them.
Mm-hmm.
And same for girls. They learn to be treated like an equal, to be treated like a partner, like a friend. Then,
Mm-hmm.
and then they don't see themselves as needing to cater to the boys because they've built a friendship. They know how to, you know what I mean? They see each other as people, not as sexual conquests or wanting to be wanted by them.
Yeah,
so,
I think what's being implicitly, maybe not taught but learned by both sexes is the boys, due to lack of integration and interaction in an acceptable manner with the opposite sex, is that they grow up to just see them as something to conquer sexually, be it in person or in far more cases nowadays, pornography.
Yeah.
And due to the lack of meaningful integration and interaction from women or from girls with boys, is I think it's becoming sooner and sooner that the girls are starting to see the boys in, as they both mature sexually, as somebody they need to parent, rather than that person actually being their partner.
I think both. I think there's two extremes. I think someone they need to parent, but also someone they need to impress. I think you've got two sides. They need to be constantly impressing, Mm-hmm.
because the Christian household umbrella, that thing's gone. Because the men have unlimited sexual choices.
Mm-hmm.
So then women are all constantly having to peacock.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so back to then
Perform.
Right, back to then the importance of that socialization piece and kind of how we would change education, more differentiation, more control over giving kids what they need, but also more time
More grinding
spent,
at school dances.
More grinding at school dances for sure, for sure. Yes. But again, to
Leave room for Jesus.
Mhm.
That's what we were told. At our school
I went
dances.
to a public school. We didn't talk about Jesus. They just told us to separate with a flashlight. But no, I think I love when I see boys and girls that are friends in my class, because I see them seeing each other as people. They're getting this strong foundation. Like, I don't know many men who would allow someone to talk shit about their mom. Like, from an early age, you have a stat, like, that woman she is pure, like, that's my mom, like, I know, I will protect her.
I can call her a bitch, but you cannot.
No one else can, right. But I think if you also have an opportunity as a young child to build those foundations of girl and boy friendships, that you see women and you see girls as people and that you love and care about, and there's nothing other than friendship and kindness, and so you grow up like also thinking, no, I'm going to protect all women. Like I know I wouldn't do that to someone.
Mhm.
That's someone's sister, that's someone's friend. Like my friend's a girl. You know what I mean? Like I would never want someone to do that to her. So I think when you establish that younger too, that helps kind of attitudes toward men to women later on, and vice versa, and girls to boys.
But that also preaches as well, because Christ said, "Lest you become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven."
Mm-hmm.
And to have that ingrained, all the like no, like we're playing here. Like, it's like you and I are playing. Doesn't matter if you're a girl. Like, it's all good, and you kind of keep that. You don't grow up so much, whatever that means.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I would say even in your marriage, because I think some of our most fun times are when we're playing.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like I would say above anything else, like you're my best friend.
Yeah. Yeah. This is not simple, and that's something that she's baking. So playtime's over.